Good morning. It is Friday, May 15th, 2026. This is your deep dive daily briefing. I am your anchor, delivering a comprehensive analysis of the pivotal events that have defined the last 24 hours. We begin our broadcast on the world stage, where the strategic landscape of the Middle East has reached a moment of extreme kinetic and diplomatic tension. Overnight, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz has devolved into what naval analysts are calling a dual blockade. While the United States continues its strict naval embargo of Iranian ports to neutralize littoral defense threats, Tehran has countered with an asymmetrical closure of the Persian Gulf. As of this morning, vessel traffic through the strait has plummeted by over 90%, with only a handful of ships attempting the passage in the last 16 hours. This comes as the White House confirms that American forces have begun providing direct escorts for merchant vessels to break the de facto shutdown, a move that has already led to at least 3 reported incidents of friction between United States naval assets and Iranian fast attack craft. The humanitarian and commercial toll is escalating, with over 1,500 vessels and 22,500 mariners currently estimated to be caught in the geopolitical crossfire.
Transitioning from the theater of conflict to the broader global economy, the shadow of this prolonged maritime closure is now being formally quantified by the International Monetary Fund. In an emergency update released in Washington, the IMF warned that the persistent disruptions are pushing the global economy closer to its adverse scenario. The fund has revised its growth projection for 2026 down to 3.1%, while cautioning that if oil prices remain elevated and financial conditions tighten further, global growth could plummet to as low as 2.5%. A central concern highlighted in the report is the weaponization of maritime choke points and the resulting spike in commodity prices, particularly fertilizers. As the blockade restricts regional output, the IMF warns of a secondary shock to global food security, noting that historically, a surge in fertilizer costs translates into increased food prices and reduced yields within 6 months.
In the realm of finance, today marks a historic turning point in monetary policy as the United States Senate has officially confirmed Kevin Warsh as the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. This development comes as Jerome Powell concludes his term as chair today, May 15th. In a rare move for an outgoing chief, Powell has confirmed his intention to remain on the Federal Reserve Board as a governor to finish an ongoing internal investigation, a presence that will create a unique dynamic for the incoming chairman. Warsh assumes leadership at a moment of unprecedented internal division, following recent policy meetings that saw the highest number of dissenting votes in over 3 decades. Institutional investors are bracing for a regime change, as Warsh has pledged to prioritize the restoration of price stability and a significant reduction in the Fed's massive balance sheet to correct market distortions fueled by the current wartime economy.
Turning our attention to the technology sector, the focus has shifted toward a massive infrastructure supercycle driven by the critical need for energy-independent artificial intelligence. Industry reports released this morning indicate that the global energy consumption of data centers is projected to approach 1,050 terawatt-hours by the end of 2026, which would effectively make the sector the 5th largest energy consumer in the world if it were a country. To mitigate the risks of a volatile global power grid, hyperscalers like Oracle and OpenAI are aggressively funding on-site energy solutions. This week, the strategic focus has solidified around small modular reactors, with the United States Department of Energy announcing a pilot program to move 3 advanced reactor designs toward criticality by July. This strategic pivot highlights a new reality where energy security is now as critical to technological leadership as software innovation, as the industry attempts to decouple its digital infrastructure from geopolitical supply shocks.
Finally, we look at the logistics and supply chain networks that serve as the vital arteries of global commerce, which are now undergoing a permanent structural rewiring. Major maritime carriers, including Maersk, have officially reversed their gradual return to Suez Canal transits, reinstating the Cape of Good Hope as the default route for all affected trade lanes. This detour, which adds up to 14 days to standard voyage times and absorbs roughly 7% of the global fleet's total capacity, is no longer being treated as a temporary workaround. Logistics professionals warn that the world has moved toward a fractured trade model, where regional inventory buffers and security of supply are now prioritized over cost optimization. The era of the global just-in-time model has effectively ended, replaced by a high-cost strategy of resilience that will likely persist well into the next decade as shippers seek to insulate world trade from unpredictable maritime choke points.
In summary, the global landscape is defined by an escalating maritime standoff in the Middle East that has triggered a significant downgrade in global growth and a historic leadership transition at the Federal Reserve. Technological innovation is pivoting toward energy-independent infrastructure, while the global shipping industry has accepted a permanent, high-cost rerouting of world trade around Africa. Based on the current trajectory, I predict that the official takeover by Kevin Warsh as Fed chair will serve as a definitive signal to the markets that the era of central bank accommodation is over. Even if a diplomatic breakthrough occurs in the Middle East, the structural inflation baked into the new regionalized logistics model and the massive capital redirection toward energy-independent AI infrastructure will prevent a return to the low-interest rate environment of the previous decade. We are entering a cycle where resilience and national security will consistently outweigh the efficiencies of the old globalized order for the remainder of 2026.